make relationships. Any edge you can give yourself is important. Not everybody's going to give the best advice, but you can get a lot of amazing information from just chatting with other brokers, talking about their stores. Maybe, they've done a lot of business in a building before and you haven't. And you ask them, hey, by the way, can you give me some insight? In the community a lot, people are, brokers are competing with brokers, or, hey, this person stole my client, or, hey, I was working with that buyer. Oh, I don't know anybody in the cities we were talking about earlier. But to really build your business, it's important to have good relations with other brokers. Like when I work on deals with some brokers I know from before, it's like, oh, we know this is going to be a seamless process. It's a big part of the game, and people don't see that.
You are listening to the number one real estate podcast in the world. We talk with real estate professionals all across North America about their wins, losses, lessons, and stories help you win in your local market today. My name is Cody from Sheridan Street. Usually I have a guest, and usually his name is Vikram Deol of the Real Estate Sales Academy, but he's not here today. Flying solo with a guest here today. Really excited. The New York City broker, Brett Fischer. Super excited to have you here on the podcast today. Why don't we set the stage a little bit, and why don't you give us like kind of a 60-second Cliff Notes version on like who you are, what you do, why you do it. Just give us like kind of a 60-second Cliff Notes version, then we'll hop into like some tips and tactics of things that are actually working today in the market.
Sure. Thanks so much, Cody. I'm really excited to be on this show. I watch you guys a lot, and I think it's incredible what you do for the community. So just telling a little bit about myself. My name is Brett Fischer. I also go by the New York City broker. All social media has the same thing. From Southern California, I've been doing real estate here in New York City for over 14 years. And a big part of what I focus on is helping people buy and sell properties. My business partner and I, we also have 400 exclusive rentals. So we help with the landlord side of things as well. My big focus is dealing with condos, co-ops. I do single families and townhouses as well. But I would say working with apartments is the biggest part of my business. I work in Manhattan and Brooklyn mainly, and then certain parts of Queens. I've done business in the Bronx and Staten Island, just not as much because it's not as accessible. So, I enjoy doing real estate here. I love it. It's amazing. You're learning something new every single day. No matter how much you know, there's always something else to do. So in addition to that, I create a lot of videos on social media where I interview people who are entrepreneurs or restaurant owners or just apartment owners, because I want people to be able to see that, hey, guess what? There's a real story behind each person that you meet and each aspect of food. And, these owners you're trying to work with, a lot of times it's just, how can I sell your apartment? But I want to share the things of what's the story of the person behind the property that they own.
So it's super interesting. We were chatting in the green room about like community. That was the biggest thing we were chatting about in the green room that really stood out to me. And like when you think of New York City, you think of like, there's multiple communities within like a large metropolis. And like with you owning 400 rentals, like, apartment buildings, and with you like, doing residential sales, how do you build relationships in like a large metropolis? Because, there's other people that, are probably in Houston or they're in the LA area, and they're looking for different ways in order to, because everyone in the space is like, build your sphere of influence, have more influence with people. But what has that practically look like for you as you've kind of like, because you didn't come from New York. It's not like you grew up there. Like you grew up in OC, you transplanted, you moved to New York. Like how do real estate agents actually build their sphere of influence, in your opinion?
It's a great question, Cody. And as cliche as it sounds, you got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And as big as New York City is, it sometimes can be so difficult to meet people and become friends with them because there's just so many people. Everybody has a million friends. And when you're new, you can go to these different groups. But how do you actually say, hey, by the way, we should hang out. Let's watch a game together. So the big thing is, look, join the sports clubs, join the Equinox, go to these clubs, go to events that you like. I hear from other people saying, oh, just go to the most high-end things you can find and you'll meet other people. But I think it's more genuine and authentic if you get involved with things that you actually care about. If you don't like art, you hate galleries, don't go to a club and expecting to meet business, because people will see through your bullshit. If you like for example, my dad's from Philly. He raised me a Philadelphia Eagles fan, even though I live in New York and I'm from California. So I go to different Eagles bars, different Eagles groups. I meet tons of people and I become really good friends with them. I'm not
Right.
going to a Jets bar and saying, oh, hey, I love the Jets too. I mean, I like watching them. I go to things that I actually enjoy. If I'm going to go to a gym and I'm looking to meet people, I want it to be more of a social club as opposed to something where you're just like boxing to get in good shape. So
Yeah.
it's really a matter of going out and get involved with things that you like. Because in New York, people will tell you to your face, they don't like you, which I appreciate. If they like your style, they'll say that. So when people are trying to pretend to be someone they're not, usually you can tell. So that's the biggest thing. Get out there, and who cares if like, hey, want to hang out sometime? No. Hey, dude, you want to get a drink sometime? I mean, sometimes it feels like you're dating, it's like, like I have a girlfriend and everything, but like, you're talking to somebody and you're meeting a guy and it feels like you're kind of courting him to trying to hang out and build that relationship. It's so unique here, but I hear people say the same things.
And community is so interesting. Like I think back when I was living like in Canada, and we lived in a small town about 45 minutes from the Toronto, the GTA, and I found it was like easier to build relationships in a smaller town. And I hear that strategy, like oftentimes in a small town, it's like, give more back to your community. But like in large metropolises, like we don't hear that as much. And it's an important thing to remember that like the same things that work in a small town also work in a large metropolis. It just might take a little bit more time in order to meet more people. But like you have your subgroups of areas and you have your things that you enjoy doing. So that's a good reminder. Now, we were also chatting in the green room about follow-up. And I think so many real estate agents, I know so many real estate agents in this space, they struggle with that. They struggle with like follow-up. I think the national average is like 1.4 times agents follow up with the leads or follow up with people in the database. It's crazy. That's the CRM data. Our data within our call center is showing us it's taking about 35 touch points in order to get an appointment. And you were mentioning in the green room, it's like, hey, I follow up 10, 20, 30, 40 times. Like, what is your, like, obviously you have the leads that you're probably from social media. That's totally different. You have leads that, from your sphere of influence. You have the people you meet on a daily basis. Like, what does good follow-up cadence look like to you? Because you mentioned in the green room that a large portion of your business comes from follow-up. Like, what do you think effective follow-up looks like in order to actually drive real results?
So I have it in different categories in terms of how I'm following up. And the number one thing is, I've used different CRMs in the past and I haven't had good return on it. It's very difficult for me to use the best way possible. So my CRM is essentially Google Sheets because I can put in all the formulas. I can organize everything. No, it's not sending out, automatic emails, but it's the way I'm able to be most organized. I have everything in folders. So if someone mentions a client, like, hey, what happened about that person? I can pull up everything on my phone or on my computer within about 5 to 10 seconds. So number one is don't use a CRM if you're not going to use it. I feel people like saying, oh, this is the best CRM or contextual or top producer, or, you have to make sure you utilize what you're doing. So with Google Sheets and all that stuff, I use all the time and it helps me follow up because when I meet with somebody, sure, I have to type it in automatically. It doesn't happen automatically, so I have to type in the information, but it's like, I'm going to follow up with this person, this person, this person. I'll have people ranked on how likely I think that they're going to close and what their sense of urgency is. And is it a perfect system? No, but it really helps me out a lot, especially when you're dealing with sometimes 1, 2, 3,000 clients. If I have to create a formula to give me access to something, or, I'm a big numbers guy. So I love math books to this day. So everything I do, I try and make it a number in terms of likelihood. If they like a certain apartment and there's a couple apartments they're interested in, I try to say, well, what's the likelihood we can get this based on their price point, based on what the ask is. I try to make everything a numbers game to help me understand what's the likelihood of something closing. So there's also a list of people that I think are probably fake. They're spam. And I hear this a lot too. Don't waste your time on this, $10 million client. They're fake. They're not real. They're just spam. But, let's say you get 100 of those and even one of those is real. Is it worth getting a $10 million client just because you followed up with all of them? Some of them I know are 99.999% fake, but I still will follow up just, hey, what's going on? Or, sending an auto message just to check in because you never know. And honestly, I've closed some pretty big deals from that. But people don't want to take the time. They're like, oh, this is a waste. I can't, but literally in the past 8 months alone, there were 3 people that didn't respond to me for like the first 3 or 4 months. And I still sent them, like we spoke originally. And then, that happens. You have a conversation and then they fall off the face of the earth, but I kept following up with them. And that's just what it is. It's a big part of the game. And people don't see that. They look on TV like, oh, I just closed a $40 million apartment. And, oh, it was simple. I just showed them one time and I met them because I was out at the club. And it doesn't work that way. It takes a long time to establish these relationships. And, especially in New York City, you're dealing with condos, co-ops. If you're all cash and it's a co-op, it still take several months to close. If it's a condo and you're not all cash, you're financing, it still take a while for management to look at everything, get the financing. So it's a longer process, and you have to take this real estate profession not just like a job, but also like a business. You have to treat it as both.
It's so fascinating because then in the tech world and in other sales based environments, like they just know that it's going to take 6, 12, 24, 36 months in order to nurture a lead. So they're constantly thinking of ways that it's like, what's my next entry point? I think that a lot of people and like a lot of agents that we advise, they have like analysis paralysis because they're like, Cody, what am I going to say when I follow up with this prospect? I followed up with them 3 months ago. So they don't follow up because they don't know what they're going to say. And we talk a lot about this inside of our Trust Rapport Influence Sales Method. But I'm curious, what is your 3rd, 5th, 10th, 24th touch point actually look like? Again, I love what you say around the Google Sheet because I'm not fancy. Like when people ask me all the time, like, what's the best CRM? It's just absolutely the one that you use. That when you're growing a team, I tell teams we advise some teams. I say to them, I'm like, hey, Follow Up Boss is probably going to be your best scalable platform out there. But for an agent that is following up with, a couple hundred leads, even a couple thousand leads, Google Sheets could be super, super effective. But what does good follow-up look like to you? What as you build that relationship and, as you have more conversation, what does a good conversation flow look like to you?
So it's interesting you mentioned Follow Up Boss because there's a lot of CRMs that don't really work in New York City because we don't have a CRM. I'm sorry, not a CRM. We don't have an MLS. So it doesn't work the same way as it does in other markets. And because of that, certain things are better for New York real estate than others. We have a lot of funky ways of doing on things. But, I think that instead of just having an automatic, 3rd follow-up is going to say this, 10th follow-up is going to say this, I really will think about, okay, instead of being 1st, 2nd, or 3rd, it's what's happening right now. I think offering value is really important when you speak with somebody. If you're just saying, hey, how are you? That doesn't do anything. Unless I send my breakup text where it's like, hey, I just want to check in, do you still want me to follow up? And outside of that, hey, by the way, I saw that, rates just, dropped half a point today or dropped a quarter of a point, and it's been steadily dropping for the past couple months. Has this helped your situation at all? Or some people are looking at the monthly payments. They're not necessarily looking at what a price of the apartment's going to be. And they're like, wow, the monthly's gone down. I can actually afford it now. So I try and offer value like, hey, there's this article I saw, I thought you'd be interested in, or hey, there's this thing about this location. I really try and make it customized. So even if I'm using a similar message to a lot of my different clients, it's not just an automatic, oh, this is the 4th text, it's going to be this. And that's what a lot of those CRMs do. Like, hey, how are you? Did you check out my newsletter? Or hey, I just don't feel like it's authentic. And I tried those and I did not have the best success. And I was also getting a lot of report spam and things like that. So I really try and do something based on what's happening right now. For example, a debate, and I don't know when this is going to air, but, one of the debates came up with, Trump and Kamala Harris and talking about how can that impact what's going to happen with rates. And you say, well, traditionally, this is what usually happens. Before and after, it's X. And during, it's this. So even something like that, where it's more relatable to a current event as opposed to just a generic text.
Yeah. I love the timely approach. When something comes out, it's like you're sharing something in real time so that they don't feel like it's a canned automated message. It's like, hey, we actually put this together. And I'm curious, like, because I want to shift gears here, because like we've been chatting about like apartments, and like you mentioned, like you have your residential real estate business where, you're selling, but it sounds like you also have, you're also doing some rentals as well. Am I hearing that?
My business partner handles all the rentals. I handle all the sales.
Got it. Okay.
So like when I get a rental, like from a landlord, he handles all that. It makes things a lot easier to manage, and he knows everything. So
I would love, because like, a lot of, like, it sounds like you guys have clear, cut and dry roles. Like, have you guys always been like business partners, or is this something new?
It's been about 6 years. Wow. It's a long time.
Okay.
It's been about 6 years. Yeah. But the role keeps evolving, and, at this point, it's probably the most clear cut that we've had. But, because I get rental referrals a lot, like, hey, can you help me find an apartment? And I'll do a lot of pro bono, if you will, on the phone. I won't usually show people in person unless it's, a client who just bought or is buying and they need help with something. I'll do it for free. But I'll get on the phone to people. It happens all the time. 2 weeks ago, somebody had a $17,000 budget, and I'm like, well, this is what you should be doing. But a lot of time it's difficult to show from the tenant side of things. And then last week, somebody had a budget of $2,200. So different price points, but I spent honestly about the same amount of time with each of them, just on the phone saying, here's some things you want to look at. This is what I would do. If there's some managements you're interested in, let me know. I'm happy to be on the phone with you, but I'm not going to go to the apartments with them in person.
When you talk about partnership, like what has that looked like for you? Because it sounds like, how long you been in the real estate space again? Like
14 and a half years.
14 and a half years. So when you moved to New York, did you notice like a difference in the business when you made the decision to partner, or walk us through kind of the evolution of
when you say partner, can you be a little bit more clear?
So you guys are business partners, right? Like you guys operate the business together.
Yeah.
So
but we were officially, it became more of a partnership probably in the past 7 months, because we were working together already. We still had different roles, but it's evolved a lot more as we've worked together. So now we're co-founders of our company, and now it's like very specific.
Got it.
How things are delegated. So that's more recent.
That's more recent.
Even when we opened up our new company, it was still, there were a lot of other people who did different things, and now it's really the two of us running everything.
Okay. So like residential real estate in New York, obviously, people, they when they see the $1 million listing, and even in like LA, the selling sunset, it's a bit like, I find a lot of these television shows can be like super misleading towards like what real estate actually 100%. Is. It could be super misleading towards what actually the day-to-day operations of real estate. If somebody were to be like watching this podcast right now, what would you say is kind of like the biggest like difference from like what you see on the show from what you actually like live day in and day out in New York?
If you showed what typically goes on in a regular day in real estate, it would be the most boring show alive. Like, people selling copiers would be more exciting. People literally like painting on walls and just do it. I mean, there's so much, like, I enjoy it. I really love it, but it's not fun to watch on TV. I mean, a big part of my day is going through emails, answering them, following up with clients, text calls. Sometimes people don't respond, scheduling appointments. The amount of time I'm physically showing is, a very small portion of it, considering how many hours I'm working in a week. Like, I could work 80 to 100 hours a week. I take calls at 2 a.m. Like, I'm honestly up until 2 a.m. pretty much every single night, regardless. I'll wake up at 7 and I'm still working on different things. I also have a video production company, graphic design company. And so they help with my real estate stuff as well. So for me, a lot of it is following them, as we talked about, which is a big portion of it. The emails, working on the videos, giving edits back to my team, saying, hey, I like this, please change that. Same with the graphics. Also working on my website, because my I've written over 200 articles and made over 200 educational real estate videos. And then, probably over 1,000 of just videos in general. So there's a lot that goes on every day, and it's just not that exciting if you're literally taking a camera and doing a documentary of what's actually happening. Like, if you're doing what's the most exciting thing, sure. I mean, like, last week I was showing a $13 million property and an $8 million property. And yesterday I was doing a shoot with a $15 million property. But, are those things exciting? I wouldn't say they're exciting, because for me, it's about educating. I'm looking at it from a different perspective. I go into a property like that, I'm like, okay, how is this going to work for my client? And I might say, this is a really nice view, but is it a nice view for the price? Or, wow, this is a gorgeous apartment, but does it make sense based on the layout? As opposed to somebody going and like, oh my gosh, this is the most stunning thing I've ever seen. But is it the most stunning thing you've ever seen for the price, for the monthlies, for the area, for the modernness of the building, or for the lack of privacy? You have to think about all those things as a real estate agent. It really changes the lens quite a bit.
It's really interesting. Like you talk about the, a couple thousand blog posts you've had. You talk about the 200, videos you've recorded. I'm curious, like, because, that's a ton of content. That's more content that a lot of, agents will produce in their entire life. But the thing is, like, people tend to have this preconceived notion that it's like, all I have to do is create content. Like when you look at your business as a whole, and you laugh because but it's true. Like there's agents out there that'll be like, all I have to do is create content. If I just created more content, I would make more business. It's just, I believe it's not true, but I'm curious your thought process. Like, and I'm curious to kind of break apart, like, hey, you have a video production company, you're doing the media, you're doing the content. Like what percentage of your business would you say is coming from social media versus like the conversations, the networking, the follow-up? Like, do you have that kind of broken down, like, just so we can kind of give some value to people?
So here's what I'll say. Even though I actually don't like social media, I know it's kind of ironic. I would say in terms of new leads that are just from social media, it's a much smaller percentage. But the reason why social media is so important is you have to look at all the different buckets of how you can get business. One's going to be from just reaching out to your sphere. And one's going to be, from open houses. One's going to be from other brokers who just don't want to deal with it. Some's going to be from social media. Some's going to be from certain sites you're paying for, like, or it's a Redfin or a Zillow or, whatever the case is. But the more buckets you have and the more consistent you are with these buckets, the more opportunities you're going to have to do business. Now, I have done a decent amount of business from social media as a whole, if you're including the TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. But more important than anything else, and this goes with my website as well, which actually a lot of people reached out to me on, it's a great resume. So somebody is like, who's this guy? And he's talking to 5 other brokers, or she's talking to, 10 other people and had already had 2 other referrals. They get to know you better. So it's hard to see, I would, for myself at least, and I know others I've talked to, you don't usually see people just reach out, hey, by the way, let's work together. I saw your video. It's more of they're typing your name online. What have you done? What are your reviews? Are you a human being? And when people look at my Instagram, they say, wow, your personality comes out. We see you're a real person. You're not so stiff. You're not so you're not too jokey because you do talk about important things. I think that's really what it does more than anything else. I'm sure there are some people who have TV shows, social media is everything, but for the average agent, some of these real influencers, they don't do a ton of business. Like their business that they're doing isn't real estate. It's whether it's coaching, whether it's, offering advice, whether it's just talking about New York City in general. For me, selling real estate and helping you buy real estate, that is my number one focus. Anything else that comes from the videos I do, that's just gravy. But I'm not somebody who's like trying to make all my money because of social media, which I'm not going to mention any names, but because I've met with them a bunch, a decent amount of people who they literally don't, they'll do rentals, they don't do sales, but they have a big following. Yeah. So, and they've led conferences and they've talked about different things, but that's not, so social media is important, but and it's kind of a long answer.
No, and it's great. And I love the way you use it's kind of like a resume. It's like when somebody makes the decision that they want to go hire you, what are they going to do? They're going to check out your Zillow reviews. They're going to check out your Google reviews. They're going to go to your social media and they're going to make the decision. Like, especially if they're in the solution awareness phase where they're like, hey, I'm going to hire somebody to sell my property. I'm going to take a look online. Either I'm going to ask for a referral, but even if I ask for a referral, I'm still going to look online to see, is this person crazy, or are they actually smart? Because I'm going to have to spend time with them. They're coming into my home. So 100% agree with you there. Kind of wrapping up here, like, what is like one thing you're thinking about right now in real estate that you feel like is going to catapult you to even more success in 2025? Because I would love to kind of get into your brain a little bit to essentially like give that advice to an agent that is thinking about how they grow their business going into 2025.
If there's one thing that I could offer, I would say make relationships. And in the community a lot, people are, brokers are competing with brokers, or, hey, this person stole my client, or, hey, I was working with that buyer, or, I don't know anybody in the cities we were talking about earlier. But to really build your business, it's important to have good relations with other brokers. Like when I work on deals with some brokers I know from before,
Totally.
It's like, oh, we know this is going to be a seamless process. Or, working with the same attorneys, working with the same lenders, working with, maybe that two very similar deals, but they know I respond very quickly and I've done this before. And so they'd rather go with me. Any edge you can give yourself is important. Also, not everybody's going to give the best advice, but you can get a lot of amazing information from just chatting with other brokers, talking about their stores. Maybe, they've done a lot of business in a building before and you don't, you haven't. And you ask them, hey, by the way, can you give me some insight? It's important to be close with the broker community, even though it seems like every single person in New York City is a broker. The actual community, it's pretty small. So you want to treat people with respect. You have to understand your fiduciary duty, but you can still handle things in a respectful way because it gets back to you. And so any agents that I'm working with, I really do my best to treat them in the best way possible and, let my ego go. Because sometimes I'm like, why is this broker acting like this? But I have to think about what's the overall goal. It's to represent my client in the best possible way, even if I have to, take a deep breath and just let things go. So that's the number one thing. Make relationships, get to know people, get to know brokers, get to know the office managers, treat them well, the marketing people, everybody around you, because you're going to realize that when you need something and you've treated everyone really well, they're going to want to help you out too.
I couldn't agree more. Like our motto is work hard, be kind. It's one of those things where, so many real estate professionals would be doing so many more transactions, so many more units if they just weren't a dickhead. It's just that simple. Like
I get it. I'm with you.
You write, like, you see things in Facebook groups, people bashing other people in Facebook groups. It's like, hey man, like this goes a long way. People know people, and I 100% agree with you. And hey Brett, I want to say thank you for your time today. I want to say, if somebody were to want to reach out to you, maybe they want to learn a little bit more about what you're up to in the New York area, where's the best place we can send them for them to have a conversation with you?
So you can go to my website, thenewyorkcitybroker.com, everything spelled out just like here, the New York City Broker. Or you can find me, Instagram is the social media I use the most, and that's the same thing, the New York City Broker. I'm very, very responsive. So if somebody, sometimes they send me a message and it's I don't see it right away, but, you can call me, text me, send me an email via my website, contact me on Instagram. I'll see it. And once, we're talking, like I'm pretty responsive.
Hey, Brett, I want to say thank you for, delivering so much value today. I want to say thank you for tuning into another episode of the REHN podcast. We'll see you soon.